The wedding hall looked like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering golden light across marble floors. Soft music floated through the air as guests in elegant suits and glittering dresses laughed, posed for photos, and admired the lavish decorations. Everything about the evening screamed perfection, everything except the moment she walked in. The girl stood at the entrance for a second longer than necessary, her fingers nervously gripping the strap of her small purse. Her dress was simple, pale blue, carefully chosen weeks ago after visiting 3 different shops. She had picked the one that felt least revealing, the one that didn't cling too tightly. Still, she felt exposed. She always did in places like this. As soon as she took her first step inside, eyes turned. At first, it was just quick glances, then longer stares. A few whispers floated across the room like poison carried on the air. Did you see her? Why would she wear that? Is she really coming to the wedding like this? A group of young women near the front table covered their smiles with manicured hands, their laughter sharp and cruel. One of them leaned closer to another and whispered something, and they all burst into giggles. The girl didn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She had heard them her entire life. Her cheeks burned, her steps slowed, she kept her head down, pretending to admire the floor tiles, counting them in her mind. 1, 2, 3, anything to keep herself from running back out the door. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure others could hear it. She wondered, not for the first time, why she had agreed to come. Then she felt it, a gentle pressure on her shoulder. Her father stood beside her. He wasn't wearing an expensive suit like most of the men in the hall. His jacket was neat but clearly old, pressed carefully for the occasion. His face carried the marks of long nights and longer years, lines carved by worry and sacrifice. Still, when he looked at her, his eyes softened. "Walk with me," he said quietly. She nodded, swallowing hard. They moved together toward their table, but the whispers followed them. One man openly laughed, nudging his friend and pointing. Another guest shook her head in judgment, lips curling with disapproval. "This is a wedding, not a joke," someone muttered loudly enough to be heard. The girl's hands trembled. She felt like every step was heavier than the last, like the floor itself was trying to pull her down. She wished her body were different. She wished she were invisible. Most of all, she wished people would stop looking at her like she didn't belong. They reached their seats near the back of the hall. As she sat down, her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. She stared at the centerpiece on the table, a bouquet of white roses, and tried to breathe normally. The laughter from across the room rose again, louder now, crueler. Her father noticed everything. He saw the way her shoulders curled inward. He saw the way she avoided eye contact. He saw the tears she was fighting so hard to hold back. His jaw tightened, not in anger yet, but in quiet resolve. He placed his hand over hers. "You belong here," he whispered. But the room didn't agree. At least, not yet. Dinner service began with perfect timing, as if nothing in the world could ever go wrong inside a room this beautiful. Waiters in black vests glided between tables, placing plates with practiced smiles. The sound of clinking cutlery and polite conversation slowly filled the hall. From the outside, it looked like a flawless celebration. For the girl, it felt like sitting in the center of a storm. She stared at the food in front of her, appetite completely gone. The smell made her stomach twist, not with hunger, but with nerves. Around her, people laughed freely, their joy sharp and distant, like something she was not allowed to touch. Every now and then, she felt eyes land on her again, heavy and judgmental. Across the table, one of the bride's friends leaned back in her chair, scanning the room with bored amusement. Her gaze stopped on the girl. A slow smirk spread across her face. "Wow," she said loudly, not bothering to lower her voice, "I guess the buffet didn't stand a chance tonight." The words hit like a slap. A few people laughed, others gasped, then laughed anyway. Someone added, "Careful, she might eat the wedding cake before it's cut." The laughter grew, louder, uglier. The girl's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against the plate. Her chest tightened as if a heavy hand had closed around her heart. Heat rushed to her face, and before she could stop them, tears spilled down her cheeks, dropping onto the untouched food. She tried to wipe them away quickly, hoping no one would notice. But everyone noticed. Her father froze. He had heard insults before, directed at himself, at his job, at his old car. He had learned to swallow them. But this was different. This was his child, the little girl who once held his finger while learning to walk. The same child who had spent months in hospital beds, fighting a body that refused to cooperate. He watched her shoulders shake as she tried to breathe quietly. The laughter continued. Something inside him broke. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed his chair back. The sound scraped against the floor, sharp enough to cut through the noise. A few people glanced over. He stood up, tall and steady, though his heart was pounding. The girl felt the movement beside her and looked up in panic. "Dad, please," she whispered, fear mixing with embarrassment. "Don't." He didn't answer. He walked away from the table, past rows of guests who turned to watch him with curiosity. Some assumed he was going to complain. Others rolled their eyes, already bored of the drama. At the head table, the bride frowned. "What's he doing?" she murmured. The father reached the stage where the band equipment and microphone stood. He paused there, taking a slow breath. The room had begun to quiet, the laughter fading into awkward whispers. He reached for the microphone. The sudden feedback screech made everyone jump. Conversation stopped. Forks froze midair. Hundreds of eyes fixed on him now. The girl's heart raced. She wanted to disappear. Her father looked out at the crowd, his gaze calm but heavy, like a man carrying a lifetime of untold stories. He didn't speak yet. He let the silence stretch, long enough for discomfort to settle in, long enough for the laughter to fully die. Only then did he lift the microphone closer to his mouth. And the room held its breath. Words. The silence in the hall felt thick, almost physical, pressing against every guest. The father stood under the bright stage lights, the microphone steady in his hand. He scanned the room slowly, not with anger, but with a calm that made people uneasy. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, and clear. "My daughter," he began, "is the bravest person in this room." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. The girl stiffened in her chair, her breath caught between fear and disbelief. She had never liked attention, especially not like this. "Many of you laughed at her tonight," he continued. "Some of you pointed. Some of you made jokes that you'll forget by tomorrow." His eyes stopped briefly on the table where the mocking had started. The smiles there were gone now. He took a breath. "But I will never forget them." The room grew even quieter. "She wasn't always like this," he said gently. "When she was 7 years old, doctors told me she might not survive the year. A rare illness attacked her body. The medicines saved her life, but they changed her forever." The girl's hands trembled in her lap. Memories flooded back. White hospital walls, the smell of disinfectant, nights when pain wouldn't let her sleep. She remembered her father sleeping in a chair beside her bed, still wearing his work clothes. "I worked 3 jobs, he went on, his voice tightening for the first time. "Day shifts, night shifts, weekends, whatever it took. Not because I wanted money, but because I wanted time. Time for her to grow up. Time to hear her laugh again." Some guests lowered their heads. Others blinked rapidly, uncomfortable emotions stirring. She learned to live with people staring. She learned to smile when strangers judged her body instead of her heart. He paused. "What she never learned, because I never taught her, was to be ashamed." The girl's tears returned, but this time they were different. They weren't born from humiliation, but from something warmer. Something healing. The father straightened. "And now," he said calmly, "there's something else you should know." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He didn't wave it dramatically. He simply held it up. "This wedding," he said, "this hall, this food, this music, every detail, was paid for by me." A gasp swept through the room like a sudden wind. The bride shot to her feet. "What?" she whispered, her face pale. "I'm the silent partner who funded the groom's business 5 years ago," the father continued. "The same business that made tonight possible." His eyes hardened just slightly. "I chose to remain invisible. Tonight reminded me why." Whispers exploded. Shocked faces turned toward the girl, then back to the man on the stage. "I didn't come here to be thanked," he said. "I came as a father. And I will always stand between cruelty and my child." He lowered the microphone. The hall remained silent for a long second, then applause began. Slow at first, then rising, spreading from table to table until it filled the room. Some guests stood, others wiped tears from their eyes. The girl stood too, legs shaking. Her father walked back to her, ignoring the stunned stares. He opened his arms. She stepped into them, burying her face in his chest as the applause continued around them. For the first time that night, she felt tall, seen, unbreakable, and no one laughed anymore.